Today on the Human-istic RESOURCES Show, we're going to talk about the next workplace crisis. You're not going to want to miss this one. Okay, welcome everyone to the Human-istic RESOURCES Show. I'm Denise O'Malley. I'm the founder of Unified Wellness. And today we're going to be talking about the next workplace crisis. And while I'm doing this, I'm also trying to make sure that we're live on all of our streaming channels. So hopefully we are. If not, I apologize, and we'll get this video posted as soon as I possibly can. This is what happens when you're wearing multiple hats. So let's talk about wearing multiple hats for a second. One of the reasons why I wanted to have this topic about the next workplace crisis is because for the past 5 months, I have been parenting my parents, which means, they're long distance. They're in Arizona. I'm in Colorado, and I'm the one who is self-employed, works from home. I can take my computer and work from anywhere. No, you can't. When you're dealing with parents and issues like that, it's hampered my ability to be as effective as I possibly can. And that is going to be the next crisis, because when your employees are taking care of other adults, their parents, a spouse, a sister, brother, sibling, an adult child, their mind is not all there. We call it presenteeism, right? They show up to work, but they're not all there because they're focusing on different things. And so we're going to talk about that issue today. And I have a few friends that I have invited to be with me, and I want to introduce you to them now. First of all, from our Unified Wellness Network is Lynn Lambrecht. She is the founder of The Living Planner. And Lynn, thank you for being here. I'm so glad to see you. I'm looking forward to your input today. Also is Dr. Natalie Forrest, who is a revolutionary. She is the CEO and founder of Natalie Forrest International. She is also the Germany country chair for the Oneness and Wisdom Wing for the G100, which is a pretty amazing thing. We don't have time to talk about it here today. And then, hold on, there we go. And I have my friend Bob Brocker. Bob is the founder and president of Age-Wise Colorado, which is a fantastic nonprofit based in Colorado. But they have some wonderful resources that we're going to be able to share as well. Where I want to start is with, let's see if I can do this. I want to talk about the problem, and then we'll address some of the solutions to it. So this is something that was put out by AARP, and there's another organization, I'll show you that in a second, about caregiving statistics in the United States. And this is 3 years ago. And you can see they're comparing it to 5 years before that. But there are currently 53 million Americans who are currently providing unpaid care in the United States. And of the 53 million, let me go scroll down, 61% are working as well. So Bob, let's talk about this for a second. You and I, we were chatting about this a few weeks ago, and you were spouting off some statistics to me. What's the financial impact to an employer?
Well, it's pretty significant, actually. On average, a caregiver who is working misses about almost 7 work days a year due to their caregiving responsibilities. And that doesn't account for the reduced effectiveness that you mentioned earlier, because that's very true as well. My career was in the railroad industry, so we were very much interested in safety at all times. People around a lot of heavy equipment, moving equipment. And so any distraction at all while people are out there working could be fatal, and sometimes has been fatal. And so any way that we can help reduce those kinds of distractions will help not only the employee, but the employer as well. The other thing, I think that, there was a benchmarking survey that was also done by AARP of employers, and 82% of employers agreed or strongly agreed that over the next several years, caregiving would become an increasingly important issue for employers. So we have all of that information to work from. And at this point, I just kind of turn it back to you, Denise, if you have any further questions you'd like to ask.
Yeah, the impact is huge. And you made an important point, the safety of employees. Particularly if they're in an industry that it requires, they're working construction, they're working manufacturing, they're working as in the schools even, okay? If they're not 100% there, it's going to be an impact on the individuals. Lynn and Natalie, let's start with Lynn. I would like you to focus a little bit on what brings you to the table today. And I'm going to actually step away for just a minute while you are talking. So please keep the conversation going. This is live, folks. And I have a dog who's in distress. So she's whining. I need to step away. So Lynn and Natalie, if you wouldn't mind sharing what brings you both to the table.
Of course.
Happy to step in, Denise, and Natalie, jump in anytime too. Bob, I like you. Safety was a concern in my industry as well. I was in aviation for over 30 years. So my first experience as a true caregiver personally was when I was living in Asia, believe it or not. And my company's home office was in Chicago, which was across the state from where I had grown up. My mom was having major heart issues, and my dad, during one of my mom's surgeries, was not all there. And we found out that that was the beginning of Alzheimer's. So I was able to return home in deep gratitude to my vice president in Hong Kong to tether me back to Chicago so I could begin the journey for the first time with 5.5 years of while my dad was still living. And I will tell you, also as a leader of people, I encountered that experience as well for employees that were having same issues with parents, older parents, but sometimes in the case of children. And, we didn't have specific HR policies surrounding that. At that time, we had internal support, and maybe because I had been experiencing older parents my entire life as the youngest child, I had a great deal of empathy in that situation and created ways that we could back each other up. But it'd be nice. It's very difficult. We can stuff it down. Work can also be a welcomed distraction from the personalized issues that we face. But I will tell you that it is a real concern, not just presenteeism, but it's absenteeism, it's motivation, it's actual productivity, and all of that impacts the bottom line. And when we're concerned about a P&L, I have a saying that I used to say all the time is care for people and care for business, because at that end point, if we're taking care of our own, they're the first employee we have. Natalie, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I think for me, it's a number of things as well. I'm a single mom, so that goes like towards the lower age group. But then I also, of course, because of my age, have a mother who is older. And even if she was not experiencing some health issues, I would want to be closer to her. So I actually lived in the US for a long time. And about, almost 2 years ago now, I decided to move back to my home in Hamburg for a number of reasons. One of them was absolutely my mother, because she was going through some health scares. And if we put that together, like both of you said, on the one hand, if we're just using the factual brain, the economic impact on my family and also on the economy at large, because in that sense, just looking at me, the US lost somebody who was holding a job, contributing to Social Security, and also running my own business. So right there, that dropped. And then, of course, also for me, the strain is psychologically, physically sometimes, not just dealing with one of them, but then trying to balance both of them. And you mentioned, the idea of possibly getting tired motivation. Our cup is only so full. And I think as evidence shows, our personal experience is crucial. I mean, way back when in Silicon Valley, they realized something was going on, and they allowed in an experiment people to bring in their pets and created kindergartens and stuff of that nature, so that their employees would be focused at work and not worry about what was happening at home.
Yes.
We can't really do that, have a facility or a hospital possibly right next to a company. And so it's the emotional strain, it's a psychological strain. And then also, I think the pressure at work, because we do hopefully love our jobs. We do want to perform. So it's like triple threat. And I think there was an article by Fast Company who actually analyzed the economic impact. And there was something like, if there was more support, especially for women, they looked especially at women who are leaving more often than men to take care of others. If there was more support, the economy just in the US could actually increase by about 5%. And if we think about that, it gets really interesting.
It does. Bob,
Very.
Bob, what do you think about all that?
Well, one of the statistics that I've read is that over the lifetime of all American caregivers who are caring for somebody over the age of 18, they will lose a total of $3 trillion in income and benefits. That's an unfathomable number, actually, unless you work in the federal government, of course. But that's such a huge number. And so, when you put it in that perspective, and then add to that what Lynn and Natalie was talking about in terms of the emotional side of this, it definitely can take a very real toll. I mean, I had my own experience with my parents, and they lived 1,000 miles away from me. And but fortunately, I had a couple of sisters and a brother who lived nearby, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But I'm the oldest, so I always felt some sense of responsibility to show up and try to help out as much as I could. And it does take a toll on.
And I think, if I may interject, just to support in Bob's economic discussion and financial impact, I don't know about you, Bob, and you, Natalie, and you, Denise. I mean, there is, we tend to, at least in my case, I wanted to go for the emotional support, but also the practical support, because and I didn't really consider the financial ramifications to myself. So, Bob, I am here to tell you that is absolutely true when it comes to salary and benefits. Because the second time I was the caregiver, I was 39 when I came back the first time, and I was on a second international assignment when my mom started failing. So I came back the second time and didn't have an opportunity to work in the US with that firm. So that, you forego, salary, benefits, etc. So it impacts your savings, your overall retirement planning, especially if your parents haven't prepared. So that economic impact was like an afterthought. And I wish that I had known. I don't know if I would have changed, but I wish I would have been aware of that impact in advance.
And if I may jump in there, because the other thing is the long-term effect, right? We do mention, the economic immediate impact on us, whether we did or didn't plan. There is clearly an impact. The long-term impact, let's just use the four of us. So we're dealing with older parents that we need to take care of. We're dealing with younger, maybe we're dealing with siblings. So we have all of that. So the impact on our health, the long-term stress that develops from that, which means we might be more prone to also then need medical help sooner. I mean, a lot of women, we see more and more women, I believe, get strokes, heart attacks, and so forth because of overwhelm. So that means it's not just the financial, it's not just, oh, I'm close to burnout. But while we're dealing with caregiving and trying to juggle all of these stressors and triggers, what actually happens inside of our bodies? I mean, we need to go see a counselor. We might need extra medical help. It's really like a snowball effect, isn't it?
Yes, and I think it's important too to always remember that there's also stress on the care receiver.
Yes.
Yep.
Because they're now in a role that they have not been in before. They've always been the caregiver, and now it's just the opposite. So I saw that with my mother. I mean, it was always, well, you really shouldn't fly here. You really don't need to do this. So yeah, I mean, that's how it comes out.
Yeah.
I remember when my mom actually said, I feel like I have control over nothing.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so having that, I mean, thinking of that, it stopped me in my tracks because I thought, okay, hold on. I value my independence. And she certainly has been the grand poobah a whole lot longer than I have in this world. And so how do I maintain dignity and safety for her while allowing her a voice around the table?
I think that is so important because I see the same thing. Let's just use, little things like a bag of groceries and carrying it up for like 3 stories. Okay, I know I could do it quickly, right? I mean, I could just carry it up. But the internal battle in my head of, I will offer it. If she says no, that's fine. But I really know she's going to hurt after. But I do want her to have her independence. It's a constant, small struggle because you do want her to, no, I want to carry that myself. Okay. But once you're on the 3rd floor, you're like panting and I'm worried that you're falling over. So it's like, it is very important to figure out how to balance this.
So there's a lot of components to this. I mean, where we aren't getting the support is through a lot of work initiatives. And Dr. Cheryl, I'm going to put it back up there. Dr. Cheryl, who's one of in our audience, has said, perhaps organizations can encourage a wellness group initiative that caters to employees of caregivers. I would like everybody to get to that point. The question is what? And I think a lot of employers don't know what to do and that there's not a lot of guidance out there. Bob, I'm really curious. You're connected to so many organizations under AgeWise Colorado. Have you heard of anything going on out there of what can be recommended beyond the Family Medical Leave Act, which is, 60 days is all you really get?
The only thing that I've heard of recently really was in the Wall Street Journal just yesterday. As a matter of fact, there was an article about caregiver support groups inside a couple of companies. I don't remember exactly where they were. They weren't in Colorado. And so the idea is out there. And, now that the article's been in the journal, more people will see it. But one of the issues that I think we face is, I've often thought, well, the caregiving age starts at around 40, but it's actually even in the 30s now. So
24 to 35.
Yes. So, and it's also getting older because parents are living older. So it's a pretty broad demographic potential caregivers. And the other thing that, we've always taken for granted here in the U.S. is we can pay somebody to do this. And that's not the case at all. I mean,
it's not the case anymore.
No.
It's hard to find those or be able to afford those.
Well, the number of caregivers, paid caregivers we had in Colorado just 5 years ago was 60,000. And the need is going to be almost 120,000 in the next 5 years. So that's not going to happen. So it's going to fall more and more on employees who are working to step up and be caregivers, and they may have to quit their jobs or cut back on their hours and all the other things we've just talked about.
I think Bob just gave a really important statistic about the age, because what I had just read yesterday was between the ages of 18 and 64, 80% fall within all of it. So of those ages that are caring for someone. And part of that is, longevity, but part of that is also the millennials are now the largest population group in the United States. They just surpassed the boomers. And so, the boomers are faded. The silent generation is down quite, substantially. But now it's we boomers that are starting to add to the numbers. So let's just I look at the well-being of people across the board, because honestly, Dr. Natalie, you are right on, because my cortisol levels were through the roof and I burst my adrenals. And, because I wasn't wanting anyone to know what I was experiencing from a work and productivity side, but also for my siblings and my parents, well, you just are trying to do the best you can do at all places and you strap yourself.
And I think there's a statistic that I saw, which I think is from earlier this year. I don't know exactly how accurate it is today. But I read that between 40 to 70% of family caregivers report clinical symptoms of depression. So that's a huge range, 40 to 70%. And that's only the ones who report it. So let's just think about those who don't report it, because there are people who are still trying to work. And if they then admit, or they might be worried, I mean, Denise and I, we have that discussion quite a lot. What if they don't feel comfortable to tell their HR person, I'm really stressed, I need some help?
The self-selection can be
and
brutal.
So I think that's really hard. And I think Deb Porter also mentioned, the percentage of divorces because of this impact of, I need to take care of mom. Well, I don't want you to, or vice versa. So it is enormous. It is enormous.
I'm pulling out the statistics that I had up just a minute ago, if I can get it to it really fast, because of course I took it down. Here we go. Yeah. Because there's some interesting statistics. Let's use some statistics that we can cite here. And I'm going to pull it back up. Here we go. Boom, boom. All right. So the demographics: 61% women, 39% men. Look at who the caregivers are. 34% are the boomers. 29% are Gen X.
Yeah.
Gen Z's coming up there. 23% are the millennials. 45% have had at least one financial impact. I can vouch for that. I can tell you, last minute airfare from Denver, Colorado to Phoenix, Arizona is not cheap, and have done that 5 times in a 4-month period of time, just because, oh gosh, somebody's in the ambulance going to the hospital. Got to get there. There's no other family there. And my parents refused to move back to Colorado. So that's not going to happen. They also are reporting that their own health is fair to poor. That's this red over here. 21% is saying it's increased. The number of their own health is going down. And this difficulty coordinating care, 26%. I mean, it's huge. And, this is all something that employers shouldn't have to come to the rescue every single time something is going on in an employee's life. But the fact of the matter is they're spending 1/3 of their life there, 1/3 sleeping, 1/3, getting ready to go to work, right? Or spending the weekend. So you've got, they have to turn to someone for help, for resources and support. And so that's, I guess, the mission of what I'm looking to help do is to show there are, Human-istic RESOURCES Show There are resources out there. And those people who are in charge of the people at a company having access to those resources so they can say, hey, Lynn, I know that you're dealing with some things with your parents right now. This organization may be able to help you out. Or here's a copy of the family medical leave policy. Now, when you're a caregiver and you have to take time off from paid employment, you're not getting paid during that period of time unless you're using your PTO, vacation time, or sick time, right? And then they've got the hit going on over here. And in the United States, the U.S. government really is not good at financially supporting, and it's not a tax deductible item, right? For family members. So, having those resources are just really critical. Bob, you seem to be my clearinghouse for resources. How do people? Where does somebody start to find resources?
Well, I think where most people typically start is with a Google search, which is actually not the best way to do that. You can get an overwhelming number of results. So what we're trying to do with AgeWise Colorado is let people know that we exist. We've been around now for a little less than 2 years. And so we provide vetted service providers, and we provide a lot of information, which anyone can, no matter where you live, actually. And then we do webinars, usually a couple times a month on a variety of topics. And we record all those as you're recording this today and post those on our website. So since we started, we've had close to 23,000 views of just the information in the webinar recordings. And we started getting the webinar recordings translated into Spanish, so there's more exposure. It's about 20% of our population here in Colorado is Latino. And some of the older family members in particular don't speak very good English many times. So we're trying to do as much as we can to accommodate people where they are. And Denise just pulled up the website so you can see what our homepage looks like, and be able to click on all those things at the top and see how that works out. So we're having a webinar actually on Thursday about end-of-life planning and resources that can help with that. We had one just a couple weeks ago on hospice and palliative care. So, and it was very good. We talked a little bit about the Medical Aid in Dying Act here in Colorado and how that works and doesn't work. And so as Denise is paging through there, you can see a lot of the things that we've done in the past. So we're just here to provide a resource for people. We're a nonprofit organization, and we spend a lot of our time just finding service providers that we can put on our website and vetting them, and then getting these informational articles out there and hosting the webinars and helping people age. And we really want to reach out into those employers and help people understand why this is important. So I'm so glad you're doing this today. Hopefully some of the employers here in Colorado will be listening.
Yeah, we need you nationwide, but there are other resources nationwide. I just happen to have an affinity here for AgeWise Colorado, and the wonderful thing is that your events and your past events, your recordings, they're open to the public, so it is a resource for people to go to. But I personally know how difficult it is to coordinate care and find caregivers, and I was trying to do this part of this during the pandemic, and finding skilled nursing care to come into my parents' home they just laughed at me. It was like, no, we just don't have the people for it. But it's gotten a little bit better since then. But it's also still really expensive, and it's not something that's always covered by insurance. So you've got people with limited income, perhaps, who are trying to deal with that. So the cheaper solution was for me to get on a plane and fly to Arizona and try to work from there. It was a little bit difficult.
Right. And I think that's, thank you so much for what you do, and Bob, because there are so many other resources, there are some other resources out there, and they're usually, what I have seen, most of them are, put a plan in place at one day a week you have off. Make sure you get breaks in between, which are all really, really important suggestions. That's what we as coaches, as counselors always recommend. Practically, though, there is a need for more, for a coach maybe to actually help you. And when we're looking at the HHS, when we're looking at the American Heart Association, they do have resources available. You know, if we were to Google, how do you go through that though? If you are already, trying to deal with burnout and stress. So I think that's the thing. You have a list, but then how do you know which is right, or going to the cost? I know in the US there is respite, but you also, and I'm probably mispronouncing it because I've been now back in Germany, but you have respite, and it's like, it's a great idea, and they will also then help you trying to figure out how to pay for it. But again, how do you do all of that if you're already taking care of 1, 2, 3 people and you're already close to burnout?
Yeah.
And I think one of the harder parts too is if you've not had any of these discussions and plan in advance. And so I know I'm the geek that's the proactive planner, thus the living planner. But honestly, I work with people that are even 18, up until their 60s, just to talk about more the practicalities. And that's what my consultancy focuses on. The contingencies can happen to us at any age.
Right.
And, having your ducks in a row is something that's fine if you know that there are ducks. So I want to make sure that they know that there are ducks.
Okay, hold the thought, guys. We got to pay for this episode, so we're going to take a very, very, very short break for our sponsor, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about those ducks and the resources that we have available. So hold on, everyone. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back, and I'm very grateful for Unifying Wellness to be in a position to be able to sponsor these shows every week so that we can do them for free for the general public. Yes, it is my company, but I'm still glad that I'm grateful for everybody who contributes to where we are today. And, we're definitely about workplace wellness. We're talking about the next crisis, and I'm hearing some background noise from somebody. I don't know what it is, but hopefully it's gone. And some people will say, well, what does this have to do with workplace wellness? Well, anything that has to do with the people of the company, anything, communications, caring for your aging parents, your own personal fitness and nutrition has to do with workplace wellness. So that's why we have these conversations. And we want to work with employers to be able to know where to turn when there are things that happen. And we made some really important points just before that break there. We talked about the ducks and getting your ducks in a row and knowing these things and having the conversations. And, there are people out there that I know. In hindsight, I probably should have had them on this show, and I didn't think about it. We could have had a lot of people on the show who specialize in helping you get your ducks in a row and having those tough conversations. Because I can tell you, my parents don't want to talk to me about signing the forms to give me power of attorney over their medical decisions. They don't want to do these things, but a third party can step in and explain it better. So it helped bridge that gap. And there are a lot of really good people out there, and some of them might be in Bob's network as well. But if not, I have them in mine as well. But you've got to have those conversations. Mm-hmm. You absolutely do. You need to know where to turn when something. So let me give you a short personal story. So we were thrust into a serious medical issue that we didn't know about. And I'm going to disclose some information here, and I believe I have the permission to do it, but I'll beg for forgiveness if I don't. How's that? I had traveled to Arizona a year ago last December because my mother had a surgical procedure. Minor thing, but Dad needed my help to help with Mom. They were living in a home at that time as opposed to a independent living community. And Dad, the night I got there, Dad handed me a bunch of papers and he said, "Would you take a look at these and tell me I don't understand it." And those papers were, we knew he'd been getting some medical appointments. He's been dealing with something for years. He just thought all the doctors were stupid and they didn't know what they were doing. And being quite honest about that. But as he handed me this paper that had a diagnosis on it with a word that was like that long, and I couldn't even pronounce it at the time. So I Googled it and I did Dad, you have cancer. I got to be the one to tell my dad he had cancer. And he'd been working with a doctor for months. He just didn't understand what the doctor was saying to him, partially because he's hard of hearing, partially because he also had in his mind that it was something else. So he thought the doctor didn't know what they were doing. So we were suddenly thrust into a situation, and this was during the pandemic, of trying to get somebody who could come in with care. Suddenly I had an open-ended ticket. I didn't know when I was going home. I didn't know how long I was going to have to be there. And thankfully I had my computer with me and I could, hole up in a spare bedroom and do some work. But, it suddenly made me aware of how much of a challenge this is out there. And that when you get that diagnosis or when you get a phone call, I tell you, anytime the phone rings and it says area code 480, I suddenly get PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I get that emotional overwhelm that hits me every single time now. But when you have that immediate of something is going on and suddenly your whole world changes, you don't know where to turn. And for me, I Google, and I found the area agency on aging. Unfortunately, it wasn't a whole lot of help, particularly during the pandemic. I couldn't even get them to answer the phone. So the resources were few, but it has continued as well in a lot of these nonprofits. And so finding the ones who were actually going to help you, as opposed to just turn you over to someone whose job is to part you with your money, is tough. And you're dealing with emotionalism of it, so you're not making the best decisions. And again, I know there are people out there who has made it their job to step in and be your advocate and help you through those. And then suddenly, if you put it on Facebook or your whatever social media you happen to prefer, you're going to find out the number of your friends who have walked in your shoes before you, and they are an excellent resource as well. But they don't talk about it that much. So, we've got to get that message out about all of that. So what I would like to know, some my suggestions from you guys, some ideas for an employer who is looking at this saying, okay, great. Now, where do we start? Lynn and Natalie, you both do programs of different types. What type of programs can an employer bring into the workplace to offer support for an employee? Natalie, I want to start with you.
Well, thank you. I was just thinking about that, and I want to bring in the overall idea of flexibility. That is really important. Flexibility is crucial. We've got the go-to Bible of EAPs, get them a counselor, get them financial literacy. What we really need is to create a support network. And what that means is we need not just workshops, but meetings. We need to create a work environment that is supportive, where everybody understands that together we can, and if one of us has an issue, we all cannot. I can't put it any other way. So we really need to talk about team building, one. We also need to talk about leadership. This is on this level on the one hand. On the other hand, it also means we need to create the team where the manager becomes a leader and listens to everybody in the team, where the manager, now a leader, has the ability to say, Lynn, I can see you have a headache. Why don't you go home today? Because Bob and Natalie volunteered to help out at any point in time. That is what we need to create. And can we do that? Absolutely. Because we've seen it already. There are some institutions, I will call it, where we, for example, have a bank. You can submit additional leave that you're not using. You know, instead of getting paid for overtime, a lot of companies don't pay you anymore. So they say, well, take it as flex time, but only up to a certain hour. So let's collect that flex time. I used to work actually for an institution where we did that. You collect that part of the flex time, and if Natalie has exhausted her leave and has no more sick leave she can use, she can now use the bank because everybody goes into that. That's one example. But I think key really is bringing, I love Dr. Cheryl, thank you for being here. But it's really important for us to create that team. And I'm going to bring up an example real quick of a dear friend of mine. I won't name any names. She has a daughter who is, you know, in her 20s, but she's got some health issues. And she just got a wonderful job, but her health issues meant that from time to time she couldn't perform. She's a high performer. So the whole team started breaking apart, and everyone was trying to figure out, well, is it her? Who is it? What is it? It turned out it was actually the manager who was a little backstabbing. And now it's the team, you know, against the manager. So we need to do the humanistic approach. And we can learn that by doing team building exercises that are built on sharing, that are built on supporting, and that are built on understanding that we all own part of what we're doing. And of course, yes, I do that. Lynn does that. I know Bob has people in his network who do that. Okay. So we need to create that environment where we trust each other and where even the manager comes to work and says, you know what, I've had a really crappy night because my kid is not feeling well.
I know from experience, everybody doesn't enjoy that or like that. And in my industry, that was not something that was prevalent nor common. It depends, I think, a lot on each department, the culture of the company. It depends a lot on the departmental leaders. And I know that as a departmental leader, I was the one that learned how to ask for a lot of forgiveness versus permission when I was caring for my team. And I know that it's hard in the HR world because, frankly, every pet project lands on your desk. And so how in the world do you implement the caring for the people while still caring for initiatives and hiring and retention? So I think in some ways, let's supplement and augment if we can. EAP services are there. I know that people in my teams never liked to self-select for that because they felt as if they weren't going to, they'd have a mark on them and they wouldn't receive consideration for promotion. Yet the people that did step up, it was a 30 to 1, $30 return on every dollar invested for the employer. So I'm the believer of the proactive version of that because I think that employee well-being services can be offered as well for departmental leadership. That's more where I focus. And yet it really depends on the size of your organization, how each of the departmental pieces are arranged, how many people. I mean, the size really is huge. So, but I do believe that having discussion, almost like we learned about other initiatives to support people in different stages and phases of life, this piece of understanding the support in phase of life, I think, is critical. Because as we continue down this road, more and more our people are impacted. And I think that it does have a determining factor on the bottom line, but it also gives the employee a kind of a understanding of how they're going to be treated. And if we look at the younger generations coming up, having meaning and value in life is critically important, and how they are supported is important. And I think that we need to consider all variables and bring them into play in the workplace.
And can I jump in real quick? Sorry, because
Okay.
I couldn't agree more with Lynn that we need some form of EAPs. And I think I would actually disagree with the fact that they don't necessarily, if I heard you right, so I may not have heard you right. I think employees really have not just the fear, but also they don't just want to go to a counselor. They know usually what will help them best. So they actually want to pick, not the three coaches that you're allowed to have, because none of them really resonates with them. And then they have 5 sessions they can have. So that's where the flexibility comes
And my
in.
corporate experience came from, do you need rehab? Do you need this? Do you need that?
right.
It was more of a variety menu. And so I'm not familiar with the menu you're describing.
Yeah, no, but I think that's where the flexibility comes in, right? And I've seen, and maybe this is more in Europe, but it is also in the US, where actually we used to call them soft skills, right? Where more and more companies are working on changing the way that the departments are being run. I work with a couple of HR departments right now, and they're changing the whole approach from I have to make the decision to let's make the decision together, let's be empowered. It's really interesting to see, in psychology, as you all know, we talk about practical and personal needs, and bringing them together to have more of this empathic work relationship, which is important to the upcoming generations, the work-life balance. So I think we're seeing a shift. We just, I think, need to push a little harder.
But, I think you both have very valid points, and it really depends on where the company is at this point in their progress. And a lot of them, they still aren't at a point of that let's do it together type of a thing. There's a lot of changes that have to be made. Culture, and it starts from the top down. We know all that, and we're not going to solve that with any aging initiatives, but it can definitely complement. It can definitely be a step in the right direction. With all of it. And you mentioned EAPs, and interesting statistic about EAPs. For anybody who doesn't know, EAP is Employee Assistance Plan. Okay. So it's a plan that is sold that they charge the employer a couple of bucks every single month for employees to have access to help when they need it. And they are changing a little bit. But they historically have get about 11% usage, utilization. And so it's, not many people use it. They don't want the employer knowing that they've needed the help is part of it, even though there's confidentiality there, but still. Yep. And it's typically a couple, depending on what's going on, it's a couple of visits with maybe a therapist or a counselor to help get you on the right step. It's in many ways, it can be a Band-Aid. It can also be a lifesaver for those who really need it. But we need something more comprehensive. That's what we focused on. At Udefine Wellness is be able to have a wide range of resources, and then the people who can help direct you to those resources with all of that. But as we're winding down here, Bob, I have a question for you. I was just looking at your website again here. I'm going to challenge you on something.
Okay.
If you would like to add a section to your website for employers to start at, tools for an employer to be able to, even if it's just a page to say, here are some things that we could do to help you that leads to your other resources page, I would welcome the opportunity to work with you on that. Because I think it's a way to get the message into more companies is to have them, first of all, have a place that you can start here if you're an employer, read about this, and then be able to move on to your other resources.
Sure, I would welcome that. So let's do that.
Okay, we'll put it down on our list of things to do with all of that. Okay. So as we're winding down here, we don't have any firm solutions that are going on. We had some great discussion going on in the comments, and thank you everybody for putting your comments in there and sharing your expertise and ideas and and questions as well. But let's kind of go into some final thoughts that are more directed, if we can say that. If you could wave your magic wand and do one thing that could be different to help support employers in looking for resources to help support their employees, what would your magic wand be conjuring up? Natalie? Oh, you're on mute.
That's okay. I had to sneeze. What if I had one wand? I would create one wand. Okay, I'm German, so this is a long running sentence. I would create a support group where all employees can gather to discuss what they're going through with the help of a coach and or counselor, while getting paid for the time that they spend in this coaching session. And during the coaching session, they will also receive information on how to get more paid leave and where to get additional help from their employer, flexible work hours, remote work hours, and where they can get further support to pay the bills for the caregiving. I think I got almost everything in there.
No, that was good. So as to boil it down from your long translated sentence, a guided support group on company time.
Yes.
That's going to be able to help direct into resources.
Yeah.
Perfect. Lynn, what about you?
I'm the curious Georgina of the group, and I know that when people are being measured, especially departmentally and corporately from a bottom line P&L side, I know from what I would want to know is are we currently taking a look at the loss of key employees as a measurable statistic? And what are the reasons that you're losing them? But also, have you ever questioned or queried your team as to what their caregiving responsibilities may or may not be?
Valid points on both of them. The only thing I'm going to say about the last part, the survey, the team's employees don't like to take surveys.
Oh, I know. But I mean, I would rather it be personal and actually have conversations with people, because at the end of the day, if we don't know, or if that's not supported from the top, then you're probably not going to get too far.
You're right. Absolutely. I'm going to interject on the for both of your ideas, actually. And I don't just love how I just take liberties to add to your ideas. Is as opposed to internal, make it external, where it gives them access to these, where they can be a part of a support group of Caregivers Anonymous. So that their laundry isn't being aired with other employees, because there are those who will not share anything personal.
Oh yeah, no.
Simply because they don't want it being used against them by someone else.
Agreed.
Oh, let me take that project because Sue's dealing with this over here, so I'll just take that project on. That's nice. That's nice. But I think it's great ideas. You're giving me some ideas of things that we can extend at Udefine Wellness as resources for people, because on our assessment that's part of our employee benefit plan that we offer out there for healthy living, we ask questions like this to find out, so a third party can collect that information of, are you a caregiver right now? Do you have your own support network? Things like that, so that we can then help guide the employer without disclosing who the employees are.
Right.
All right, Bob, what's your magic wand conjuring up?
Well, there are a couple of thoughts. One is to look local for resources to help employees. There are a lot of organizations that offer kind of national scope resources, but there are so many people doing great work locally that people don't even know about. So we'll look there. The other thing, though, and this kind of touches on what Lynn was saying more, is having worked at a large company myself and seeing how we evaluate return on investment on projects.
Yep.
We scrutinize those very closely, but I don't remember ever having a conversation about return on investment for doing some employee program and really diving into, okay, so what does it cost today? And if we do this, and then what's going to be our return on investment?
Mm-hmm.
It was always external stuff, or are we going to, buy 100 locomotives and 50 locomotives, or whatever it was. But I don't remember conversations about employee investment.
Bob, I'm with you a little bit on that one, and it's actually one of those interesting pieces that traditionally, when reduction in force or reduction in budget occurred, it was in training or in the employee development areas. So that always, kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit, thinking that, okay, have we measured that? And I agree with everyone. The confidentiality is huge. I mean, who
Yes.
wants this? Nobody wants to self-report. That's why, I wasn't trying to just be pie in the sky with my thought, but I do think that there is a real way that we can find out a little bit as to understand what the corporate culture is, and are we caring for people, and does that care for business, and then how do we measure against that?
Wow. Okay, I am blown away by this conversation. It's a good start. This is nowhere near the end, and having this conversation, there will be more that will take place. I think it is a big problem. It is something that we will, employers will be facing, and creating the tools now for when they are needed, because as I explained in my personal story with my parents, it can happen in a moment where you suddenly need resources you didn't know that you needed, and where do you turn? So just being able to have that available is something that can help the human resources professional, the bosses of the company, deal with all of that. I also want to commend you. Dr. Cheryl here has indicated, thanks, Bob, for bringing up the return on investment. A return on investment is a hard thing to measure. It's really tough. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is something that is really important that we need to do. Thanks for the introduction, Terry. We'll talk later. I was hitting the wrong thing. I want to thank you all for being on this conversation with me today. As I said, it is a start, but you guys I value you for the experiences that you have, the resources that you already bring to the table, and your willingness to have these conversations with me today. And I think everybody in the audience would agree with that as well. So I'm going to move you guys down to the green room real quick. Don't hang up yet. Stay with me. For everyone else, I want to thank you for being a part of this conversation as well. Some of you, oh boy, I got to tell you, today we had a little technical issues. This is one of the fun things about working with a new platform. And I do apologize for that. But for those who either messaged me their email address asking me to send you a copy of this recording, or put it in the chat wherever it is you did find the recording, I will get it out to you, because this is an important subject. I want you to see the whole thing and be a part of the conversation. And if you have ideas as to what can be done, or to help support employers and supporting their employees with this really important topic of caregiving for anyone over the age of 18. We'll be having another one, caregiving for those under 18, in a few weeks. But if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, ideas, suggestions, this is collective. We grow because of people saying, hey, have we ever thought about doing this? That's how You Define Wellness has grown over the years. So I am open to those conversations. Absolutely reach out to me. You can go to our website at youdefinewellness.com. That's YOU, definewellness.com. And I am more than happy to have those conversations with you. So with that being said, I hope to see you next week. We've got another great conversation coming up about the business side of workplace wellness with a really innovative insurance agent who sells employee benefit programs, and he has some insights that I'm really looking forward to hearing. So we will see you next week.